Good evening, friends. Today we are going to talk about whatever we have learned so far about economics and come to a conclusion or come to a perspective of what exactly is managerial economics or what do you understand by my managerial economics. This I've tried to make you understand with the help of a Venn diagram. In Venn diagram, you have you include everything or you include those parts which are the most important and relevant and try to explain concept from that perspective. In simple words, what does Venn diagram do? Venn diagram includes everything whatever is related with a particular aspect. Say for example, here there are four different circles depicting four different aspects of economics: principles, theories, practices, and concepts. Now you are trying to have everything, you're trying to draw everything, you're trying to associate everything, you're trying to integrate everything and formulate a decision. That decision is what we call it as managerial economics. It's an integration of economic principles and theories so that we can understand what are economic concepts and enhance business practices so that our decision of profit maximization and cost minimization is possible. In other words, in very, very simple words, a firm does business to make profits. This is one simple objective of doing business, right? Now, how do you do that? You keep on maximizing the profitability and minimizing the costs. You don't have a magic wand to do that. Every time you have to take a decision, right? Say, for example, with respect to firm, if you remember the questions, economics tries to provide answers to the question what to produce, how to produce, when to produce, for whom to produce, at what quantities need to be produced, right? So these are the questions that find answers, and the manner in which you do is what we call it as economics. Economics is a trade-off between scarcity and unlimited wants. That is the first principle that you come across: scarcity. Now, how does economics work? Economics works on the principle of scarcity. Scarcity means not ample supply of goods. It's not that shortage of goods. That is not scarcity. Scarcity means what? Inability to satisfy human wants creates a situation called as scarcity. There are so many things you want, but you cannot buy. You cannot have all of them, and hence, since you cannot have all of them, your wants are not satisfied, your needs are not satisfied, your desires are not met. That creates a situation of scarcity. So, what do you do in that situation? You try to find the best alternative from amongst the given set of alternatives. Like, you want to go to a movie, you want to ride a bicycle, you want to buy clothes, you want to eat out, you want to dine out, right? You want to spend money on books. Of all this situation, you have fixed income, right? You have fixed money, 500 rupees. You have to do everything. But you cannot do everything. So what happens in that case? In that case, you have a situation of scarcity. That means you cannot satisfy all your wants and desires or needs, right? So that In that situation, you try to economize, you try to optimize your decisions. You rank your tasks according to your priorities, right? So, setting priorities and trying to optimize from the available resources gives rise to a situation wherein most of your wants they are satisfied, right? That's what the principle of scarcity explains. Opportunity cost. From a given set of choices that you're supposed to make, you decide to go for first decision, that is, you'll buy books. In doing so, what you're doing, you are sacrificing the satisfaction that you can have from doing other things on a priority basis. Like, for example, instead of buying books, you go to a movie, right? What will happen in that case? You may enjoy the movie, but you may not have the books to study. So you're sacrificing something. That sacrifice is what we call it as the cost that you incur whenever you miss an opportunity. That's what we call it as opportunity cost. TVM, time value of money. Whatever you have today in terms of money is more valuable, is more worth, having more worth than having, say, that amount plus interest at a given date, at a future date. In simple words, 500 rupees today is having more value than having 500 rupees plus interest at a future date. In other words, present value of money is more important. Since present value of money is more important, you take decisions according to the present situations. Okay, for example, if you want to expand, if the firm wants to expand, if the organization wants to expand, it's not going to postpone the decision based on the circumstances. Say, for example, it's having more greater demand. It will not say that, okay, we'll think about if you have that plan tomorrow or sometime some few years later, the cost may come down. No, you are going to incur more costs if you postpone your decisions since you're having greater demand for your product or services. You want to cash in on that. So, how will you cash in on that? By deciding today. By deciding today on the value of money which you're having right now. That's what we call it as time value of money. Incrementalism. Now, what is incrementalism? Incrementalism states that for every additional input, you incur additional cost which will give rise to marginal revenue. Every additional input you think of manufacturing, right? Say, for example, an assembly line manufactures 100 cars. If you're thinking of manufacturing more than 100 cars, definitely you're going to have more than 100 cars in the same set of production line, in the same time frame. But in doing so, what you're going to do, you are going to incur your costs, they are going to go marginally, right? Marginally. So, if marginal costs have corresponding change in marginal revenues, means if there is a slight increase in cost, marginal increase in cost, it should reflect marginal increase in revenue, right? Revenue, sales revenue. So if this much cost is increasing, a corresponding sales should also increase. If this is happening, your decision to do so is good one. Your decision to do so is a sound one. Means you are increasing your production and you are seeing a rise in revenues. Till that time, that decision sounds good. But what happens if the costs they are going up and up and above for every additional input that you're putting in, the costs are going up and you don't see a rise in revenues. If the revenues stay there and if the costs keep on going up, that decision has to be abandoned. So, how do you abandon that decision? Whenever you see that there is no incrementalism, there is no corresponding increase in revenues, then now why am I talking about that? It's a situation where you're supposed to take a decision. marginalism. Now, what does marginalism means? Let us try to understand. Marginalism here means every input that you add into the process of production, it should be allocated in such a way that value added by the last unit of the input is same as its use. Try to understand. Let us try to understand with the example the concept of marginalism. Suppose a firm has got two workers to employ in three activities, say production of buttermilk, butter, and cheese. Two workers, three tasks. Now, these two workers, they have to be allocated between these three activities in such a way that whatever uses that you are going to have, whatever utility that you are going to have from doing that activity, it shows marginal increase, right? And doing that, and doing in that manner, you're trying to do what? You're trying to optimize the efforts that the two workers they are putting in amongst a set of three activities. So every additional input that you see in manufacture of, say, packing of bottled milk or bottled cheese or butter, whatever you call it, that shows marginal change, right? Your efforts should correspond with respect to the output. That is what marginalism means. Economic theories, theory of demand, what does it say? Theory of demand says that there is going to be demand for a product in the case of price being low. Prices are less, you will see greater demands if there is income level or if there is corresponding income to do so. In other words, what does it say? It also determines, price also determines the demand for a product. Second, consumers' income determines how much a product is going to be demanded. Third, prices of relative goods, they also determine the demand for a product. Now, demand is dependent upon price, income, and prices of relative goods. Relative good means similar goods. Say for example, there is going to be a demand for surf detergent if the price of relative product, say for example similar product, Gadi detergent powder, if the price, there is no difference between the price of Gadi detergent and Surf Excel, consumers they are going to buy more of Surf Excel because it has got better value attached to it. More prices, he will try to choose from the best alternative. The best alternative in this case will be, of course, Surf Excel because it's a product which has been selling on for years. That is what we mean to say by theory of demand. Theory of supply, prices keep on increasing and supply also keeps on increasing. Now, what is price mechanism? Now, according to demand and supply, prices are set. If say for example, there is a demand for a particular product and there is no supply, what happens? The prices go up. If there is no demand for a product, the supply is more, what happens? The price comes down, right? More supply, no demand, price come. Demand is there, no supply, prices go up. So, other things being constant, ceteris paribus. So what happens in this case? In this case, the price is being determined by market forces. Market forces here, demand and supply. So this gives rise to a theory called as price mechanism, or a leverage aspect of the price. Price is leverage accordingly so that there is demand and there is supply. Whenever such a situation arises, the price is leveraged, right? Say for example, the supply is more, demand is less. What happens? You try to create demand by decreasing the prices for a certain period of time, till the moment the demand picks up. Once the demand picks up, the prices go up, and then the prices are going up, the supply is also going up. So leveraging of prices is what gives rise to a principle called as price mechanism. Aggregate income, total income. Total income of the country, that is national income. If it is rising, what is national income? It's value of goods and services produced by a country in a year. That's what we call it as total income or national income. If this is showing a positive rise, that means it's a reflection that people's incomes are rising. And if people's incomes are rising, what happens? Demand picks up. So, theory of aggregate demand, theory of total income states that incomes rising means per capita income has to rise. Per capita income rising means more spending has to happen. More spending means more production, more decisions need to be taken with respect to production of goods and services. Unemployment rate. Unemployment rate reflects whether there is going to be a demand for a particular product or not. Inflation, no, prices are going up, more money is chasing few goods, gives rise to a situation called as inflation. Commodities are less, buyers are more, prices go up. Prices go up to a certain extent that correspondingly it has a ripple effect on the other prices. Say for example, what happens in the case of, if you see, if the prices of onions go up, what happens? There is a corresponding shift in the prices of other commodities also. Or for example, if the prices of, say, edible oils, it goes up, what happens? All the products that are associated with the oil, they also go up. Ripple effect, right? Inflation happens. More money chasing few goods. Interest rates. These are the interest rates that we'll be studying later on in the corresponding chapters that we are going to see. Business practices. The ways, methods to do business in the most effective and efficient manner. Effective, when you use the word effective means maximization of profits. Efficient means minimization of cost. When you do this two simultaneously, let's create a situation called as optimum solution. How do you do business? You do business in the most optimum way. What is that? Maximization of profits, minimization of costs. Now, to understand everything, you need certain concepts called as value. Now, what is value? Value is power of that goods and services to be exchanged for other goods. Say, for example, this phone has certain value means what? This phone can be against whatever I want to buy certain things, right? Say, for example, I want to go to somewhere else, I might be needing 5,000 rupees. If the phone is going to be exchanged and if I can get 5,000 rupees, that means this phone is having value to the extent of 5,000 rupees. It's the power to be exchanged. Power to be exchanged is what we call it as value. And value is derived from three concepts: utility, scarcity, and transferability. Means if this phone is of no use, it is not going to have value. If the phone is not scarce, it's not a scarce commodity, it's not going to have value. If you have ample phones, if you have many number of phones, this phone is not going to have value. Transferability, If this phone cannot be exchanged for, say, buying another goods and services, this phone is not going to have any value at all. Now, price. Value expressed in terms of money is what we call it as price. Stocks. Example of stock is national wealth, that is iron ore mines. We have a lot of iron ore mines in India. So that is what its nation's wealth, or water resources nation's wealth. That is the stock which we call stock. In other words, in very simple words, in financial terms, an asset having certain value is what we call it as stocks, transferable value. Flows, the movement of value because of addition of certain process to enhance its value, that is what we call it as flows. The movement of value, that is from iron ore, from iron ore mines you take out iron ore and convert into steel. What is happening? In doing so, there is continuous flow of value. That is what we need to say by flow. Wealth, things which have value, assets which have value, it's what we call it as wealth. This building, this house is having value. So how much is my wealth? The value of this house is my wealth. Optimization, efficient use of resources subject to certain constraints. Efficient use of resources subject to certain constraints. I can increase the efficiency of, say, pressure cooker up to a certain degree of temperature. Beyond that, it is impossible to increase the efficiency of that pressure cooker. On one side, you are trying to increase the efficiency. That means you are trying to have maximum output with the minimum of costs. That is what we call it as optimization. Now, why I'm discussing all this is because we are trying to understand managerial economics. We are trying to take decisions based on these principles, theories, concepts, and practices. Every moment you are taking a decision, you are going to take a decision in the light of all these, right? With respect to all these. So once you cannot take decisions at random, you know, when you are in the realm of business, right? You cannot take decisions at random. You cannot say, okay, since the raw material available is cheap, we are going to manufacture a lot of products. No. Even though the prices of raw materials they are cheap, you are going to leverage the cheaper rate of raw materials so that you can maximize your profitability in such a way that your decision gives the maximum output at a minimum cost. So even though the prices of raw materials have gone down considerably, you are not going to manufacture more of that product because you got to see that whether that product has demand or not, whether people's incomes are rising or not, people really want to buy that product or not. What are you trying to do? You're trying to create a market for a product which is non-existent. So this is what all about managerial economics. You got to take a decision every day. You take a decision with respect to all these things. That's all for now. Thank you. Please do drop your comments. Please do drop your feedback. That is going to help to make these lecture more interesting and less stressful. Thank you. Take care.